Is there a concern that if the Syrian army has taken over the town of Douma, things might be cleaned up, evidence might be taken away in the wake of that suspected chemical attack?
Well, it obviously is a big concern, particularly as the OPCW, the Organisation for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, is sending an investigative team to Damascus at the moment. And obviously, whilst the international organisations are gathering evidence, they want to be sure that the evidence on the ground has not been tampered with. And there will be clearly concern that as the area in question in Douma now is controlled by the Russians and the Syrians, that they will try to do precisely that. In the meantime, however, there have been reports that attempts have been made to get evidence out of Damascus and abroad, bodies being taken to Jordan, survivors of the attack moving to Jordan, where analysis can be carried out. So clearly there is a battle for information going on at the moment. Whether or not that's going to be critical to whether a decision is taken to strike at Syria by the United States and its allies remains to be seen. But clearly, nevertheless, there will be a concern that the efforts of the OPCW will be undermined by efforts on the ground but by the Syrian army to make sure that the evidence is tampered with.
Now, when it comes to President Trump, let's think back to Wednesday's quite astonishing tweet. Has there been any response from Russia on that?
Well, there has, but it's been relatively restrained. You know, the tweet itself was perhaps in part in response to comments made by the Russian ambassador to Lebanon, who said that if any missiles were fired, the Russians would respond not just to the missiles, but they would strike at the platforms that fired those missiles as well, suggesting that the Russians would fire at aircraft and perhaps at ships or submarines, which would suggest the possibility of a very serious conflict between two of the major powers in the world. Since then, there's been nothing of that kind from Russia. There has been comment from the foreign ministry saying that these sort of missiles, smart missiles, should be used to strike at terrorists, not at legitimate governments, implying the Syrian government. And from the press spokesman for President Putin, we don't do Twitter diplomacy, a sort of dismissal of Donald Trump's efforts. From President Putin, virtually nothing, except to say that Russia would honour its commitments to its allies, implying Syria, the legitimate government. I think that at this stage, the Russians do not want to pour fire onto the oil. They want to try and keep things under control. The situation is already looking extremely dangerous, and the Russians don't want to get into more of an arms struggle with the Americans than they already are in at this moment. Anything that President Putin would, if he were to make an aggressive statement back, Donald Trump might be tempted to make something equally aggressive back to them, and a situation which is already fraught with difficulty could get very much worse.
Okay, Rob Parsons, thank you.